While staying in its Sikh temple, the Gurdwara, in Delhi in April 1965, I met a couple of guys from San Francisco. They gifted me with some Sandoz pharmaceutical-grade LSD from their Swiss laboratories. I took my first trip in September. Then I went back to complete my final year at the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. In October, Timothy Leary came to Philadelphia with his message to turn on, tune in, and drop out. This created the nucleus of a psychedelic community in Philly, as happened wherever Leary and his team went. Like many who became health conscious on acid, I adopted the Zen macrobiotic diet and later visited the Paradox Macrobiotic Restaurant in New York's Lower East Side. On the spot, I decided to cancel my career path of Peace Corps, Navy, and State Department and decided instead to open a macrobiotic restaurant in London. I imported books about macrobiotics that were sold at the Indica bookshop. I supplied brown rice, snacks, every week for the UFO Club from when it opened in December of 1966. My little band of macrobiotic missionaries would talk to people who were eating these brown rice snacks, explaining between Pink Floyd sets how sugar was bad for you and whole grains like brown rice were good for you. My restaurant opened a couple of months later in February 1967, and one of my first customers was Yoko Ono, who knew macrobiotics from Japan. The organic foods market really started in our little basement in Notting Hill. People who took acid got religion, not the old patriarchal guy-in-the-sky variety, but the quest for spiritual fulfillment embodied in yoga and meditation and Zen Buddhism. Our clothes helped us to identify each other. I had imported coats that I'd seen in Afghanistan a year earlier. When the Beatles bought some at Granny Takes a Trip boutique on the King's Road, they set off a global craze. I also imported Tunisian kaftans, Tibetan shoulder bags, and Chinese silks, which Aidan Kelly would dye with blobby designs that were then tailored into shirts and dresses by customers like Hung On You, Dandy Fashions, or Clouds Have Faces. Unfortunately, our clothes also helped the police to identify us, and they started randomly searching and arresting people who looked too colorful or had long hair. We could sniff each other out, too, by the smell of patchouli, which everybody wore. We believed in the power of peace and love. The Vietnam War was at its peak. When we tried to stop it, we faced up to the full, crushing force of the law in Grosvenor Square, Chicago, and Kent State. We experienced nature and the environment on an intuitive and empathetic level, seeking out green places like Golden Gate Park or Kensington Gardens. We read the romantic poetry of Keats and Blake, sharing his horror of dark satanic mills. When the Moves sang, I Can Hear the Grass Grow, or the Small Faces sang, It's All Too Beautiful, they were singing what we were feeling. Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth both were born out of this sense of oneness with our beautiful planet. We got sexy, too. It's hard to repress sexuality when all your other senses are heightened. So if you were gay, you let yourself be gay. If you were polyamorous, you started to swing. Sexual experimentation led directly to sexual liberation. We were a community with a strong sense of communalism, not communism, quite the opposite. We didn't trust the state. We formed communes as a path to self-government. Our individualism and libertinism combined to forge a political libertarianism. It wasn't easy to get a job if you dressed like a hippie and had long hair, so many people set up their own businesses. Fashion, publishing, natural foods, and music were all areas where entrepreneurial spirits could follow their heart and make a successful living. Our goal was to create an alternative society, an exemplar of how life could be and should be. We had no idea how the legacy industries that profit from war, environmental degradation, ill health, and financial manipulation would still dominate 50 years later. This exhibition captures magnificently the deep spiritual, philosophical, and political intent of those times and their impact on the world today. It could even help to accelerate the change of which we dreamed and which has been too slow in coming. Perhaps we can still build Blake's hippie vision of a New Jerusalem in this green and pleasant land.